right, I'm with Jay Reed, singer, songwriter, dancer, author, actor coming up. And we just chopping it up. We're talking about Chickadee, one of the most talked about books. And if you don't know, you will know very soon. Yeah, we're just gonna talk about your creative process, and let's start with, how this book came to life. What was your thought process?
Well, I'm a songwriter first. I feel like that's like the core where everything kind of pours out of, from the instrumentation to everything that you hear from me. Usually starts with a song, just like a lot like this book. I didn't set out to be a author technically. I actually wanted to write a fable. I was thinking about stories like John Henry and Johnny Appleseed. And I was like, I want, it would be interesting to write a story in that canon, and I wanted to write, obviously, by writing a story, I mean, write a song that was a story, and, that's how Chickadee came about. And just for the content purposes, I was originally going to do a cartoon, but that was a little pricey as far as I was looking at prices and stuff, and so I thought, maybe I'll just do like illustrations, and then I'll just like flip through the illustrations as the song plays along, because nowadays you kind of gotta have a visual for everything, you know what I mean? And so that was the visual idea, and then from that, came the idea, okay, this could actually be a book. It is a story, and eventually, it became what you see today.
We'll just take a quick look on the inside. We've got our QR code that takes you straight to the song. You can go on YouTube. It's dedicated for Mama Bird.
Shout out Mama Bird.
Right.
All the Mama Birds.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the messaging. How do you feel like this can relate to anybody? Because this is a children's book, but it really is a story that for all ages, anyone can relate to it. So how do you think that this story translates to, let's say the everyday person? What can they get?
Yeah. So like fables, fables are usually stories that you tell the children. Like I mentioned, your Johnny Appleseeds and your John Henrys, and these types of stories are for children, but they always have like a strong theme that anybody can relate to or learn from. And with that, that's kind of where I was going with the book. It's a story of persistence, and that's a seed that you want to plant in the youth. But it's also a reminder that you want to give to anybody at any age going through anything, whether they starting it in the middle or almost to the end. Everybody can use a little encouragement. So that's kind of the direction we was going.
Thinking about, for you, I'm curious, how did the melody come to your mind? Like, were you just snapping one day and you thought about something? Like, how did the tune kind of come to life for you?
That's interesting. I just feel like it's just divine inspiration, really. Sometimes if you are creative, sometimes ideas just come to you, and I might have went through maybe one or two melodies to where this one kind of sat on me, because for the majority of the song it's very repetitive melody, till you get to the breakdown at the end. But it was so hypnotic that I was just almost obsessed with this song before it even became before I even finished writing the whole thing. You get the melody and it's like, oh snap. When I find the rest of the words to this, it's gonna be crazy. That's how I knew, all right, I'm gonna settle on this melody, and then kind of just try to find the lyrics after that.
There's some really great imagery in here, a lot of vibrant colors. So let's talk about what's one of your favorite pages?
Well, first of all, as you know, you are the illustrator, in case you forgot. Sometimes you forget, but and so as an artist, you've been drawing your whole life, and so it's why not reach out and reach out to the people that's in my circle. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I did. My first initial thing was I reached out to an illustrator. You know, he was. I'm not even sure what happened with that. I'm not even going to say anything, but you know, we still cool. But I don't remember what happened. But then I thought, you know what? Because you might have been fresh out of school or in school or either one of the two. And you know, I just don't like to be bothering people who you know, because this is your first book. And so I didn't know if it was going to be like a task for you or something that you would want to do. You know what I mean? And so when I reached out and you was like willing to do it, I was like, okay, it's about to be crazy, because you know, yeah, you've been drawing as long as I can remember. You know, you went to school. You know, you were professional. It's not just like something that's on your heart, but it's something that you study. You know what I mean? Of course, I did the original illustrations for the original content, but you know. I thought, man, if I could just take these illustrations up just one more step, you know, it would be a lot more, I guess, palatable for the average user. You know what I mean? Just having that professionalism to it.
Nice. I think too. Yeah. Let's talk about the size. Like, I remember when we first, you know, were talking about creating it, you were adamant. You were like, I want this to be a coffee table book. Like, I want this to be a decent size. How do you feel like that translates to like the messaging? Like, do you think that it lives up to, you know, like how it should be interpreted?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I knew that once I knew that you were on board with the drawings, in my mind, I thought like this should be almost like a portrait book. It's going to be a picture book, but it should feel almost like a yearbook. I wanted it to have like some type of weight to it that made it stand out more than just the song. So when somebody came in and seen a book, you know, they would be like, "Ooh, like what's that big old book over there?" You know what I mean? The one thing I will say that I might do differently in the second edition is the cover of the book. I might actually put song book right here, because a lot of people don't even know that this is an actual song. Even people that have bought the book, you know. So you know, for those who get the first copy, you'll have a first edition. It might be, you know, something special to have in the long run. But that's the only thing I can think of that I personally couldn't have thought of a better way for this to come out. You know, I do a lot of stuff as far as just like types of music that I do, from like, you know, reggae to hip hop, R&B, house, you know, but this is for me my favorite thing that I've ever done, you know, and it's a children's song. And I never thought that it would come out so good, and part of the reason why is because, you know, it has such a beautiful, tangible product to go with it. You know what I mean? That's you know, you can hold it and it'll be here when I'm long gone.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to leave on, like thinking about longevity. So in terms of the message here, you know, you need to walk before you fly, and then you can soar. How do you feel like that message will impact the future generation of artists, of just people in general?
I feel like the message is pertinent for today, for, you know, a lot of reasons. One being people are just a lot more fearless nowadays to kind of go about what it is they want to do. But even so, you know, I'm 36 years old, and so I've been doing this music for a long time, still doing it independently. And so, you know, there are a lot of people who I've come up with who were fearless, you know, in the beginning, but, you know, not everybody continues that creative path. It's hard to kind of make a living off of, you know, and so for me, that's why I say it hit close to home, because, you know, part of the reason why I come up with ideas like this that allows me to feel, you know, like myself and keep my sanity is because, you know, I've been persistent, you know what I mean? And yeah, that's one thing that I would, you know, tell anybody who is on that path. I think, you know, that can be regardless of what field you are, you know, whether, you know, you want to go back to school when you're a little bit older, or, you know, you dream of being in the NBA when you were a kid, you know, just to have the idea of being rooted in, if I see this thing through, something will come out of it. You know what I mean? And I think that you know, just with so many people just being able to have access to be able to market themselves a little bit easier and see other people doing it now because we're so connected with this technology. You know, I think that this book, you know, if it can get in that zeitgeist, it can be a good tool for encouragement for a lot of people.
I love that. That was beautifully said, honestly. Yeah, it's just about seeing things through and really just taking it a step at a time, you know. It's not going to show up the next day, you know, it might take some time, but it's just the consistency, showing up, believing in yourself. That's the biggest thing. And I love that the book talks about this, you know. And one of my favorite pages, too, is when we have our Chickadee reading, you know, the inspirational book, Yes You Can. You know, he's up at 6 a.m. Like, he's studying, and he's also, you know, just maintaining that faith and putting the work in as well.
Yeah, right. This is my favorite right here. When, you know, this when you putting the work in. You see, you got the workout video and flat. You know, got the headband on. You gotta keep the sweat out your eyes. You know what I mean? But yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate you for having me. Appreciate you for just being a part of this. And you know, there's definitely more to come.